casual test. Okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, sure. Just right now? Talking. Okay, yeah. Hi, my name's Aman. I'm going to be presenting about building today. And I'm going to do a test. We're going to see how it works. I don't know if, can you hear me? If you can hear me all right, that'd be perfect. But I'm not sure if you can. Testing. Hello. Hello? Can you hear me? It's good? Oh, that's fine. That's chill. Okay, it's good? Okay. Was that volume good, you think? Okay. Yeah. It's a equality, equals equal. Yeah, sure. Good to start? Okay, cool. So hi guys, my name's Aman. You can call me Aman, but my full name's Aman Veer. And today I'm going to be talking about the art of casually building. Now that's a rather hefty title. I mean, you may be asking yourself, what does that even mean? There's a lot of words in there that are maybe confusing when put together. So I think to begin with, it's good to talk about what building even is. Now, if you're anything like me, when you first hear the word building, something in the physical world might pop up. Maybe like building something with Legos or going to Home Depot and building something with wood or steel. But in the sort of startup space, the word building has taken on this kind of new meaning. And a lot of like very big figures, you can see Marc Andreessen here is a founder of one of the biggest venture capital firms in the world. You can see here, he's used the word around more than 2 years ago now to mean something else, clearly. And to kind of summarize what it means, I was looking online for a good definition of this new meaning that building has taken on. I couldn't find anything, but I think I took it on myself to kind of flash out a definition, and what I've come up with is that building is a process of creating something that somebody finds useful. It's pretty simple definition, but I have a few qualifiers you can say to add on to here. The first is that when I mention building in this talk, I don't want you to get the impression that I'm talking specifically about something digital. I think that a lot of times when we talk about building, we think about software, especially since the word got like popular in the tech space. But I think that you can really build anything. And although I'm going to be talking a lot about software in my case, I don't want you to think that the medium is going to limit the definition of building. And then second is that somebody that's being finding utility in this process. It can be you as the builder, because a lot of the times, ideally, you should always benefit from building, because you'll be honing your craft and you'll be creating something cool at the end, and you'll always be learning something new. And lastly, that the word useful at the end, it can mean many things. A lot of times when we think about something like useful, like utility, we think about something very plain, boring. We think about something that's going to change the world in a very massive way. And you can do all of those things without making something very serious and bland. There's a lot of value in making something funny, goofy, creative, unorthodox. And people can get entertained, educated, and inspired by those things almost equally in comparison to things that are more serious in nature, let's say. Now that I've kind of like defined building, you might be thinking, what does it mean to build casually? What is casually building? And that the definition for that, I'd say, is building something small and targeted that somebody finds useful. That qualifier, small and targeted, I think is very relevant because when you're looking to build something small and targeted, your goal is not to get lost in the weeds. Your goal is to work on timelines of days or weeks as opposed to months or years. And you want to put something out there into the world as quickly as possible, refine that process, and get better with each iteration. You might be asking yourself now, why should I build casually? You know what it is, hopefully, but now the obvious question is, why is this a benefit to you or to other people? And what I'd say is, I think this has helped me tremendously, so I think this would best be illustrated through some examples of my own journey in building. The first thing that a project of mine I want to talk about is called Lecture. And Lecture was something that was born, I think, a year and a month ago at this point. But the basic premise was that I was in CMSE 132. It's an introductory CS class at UMD, if you guys aren't CS majors. But basically, I didn't want to take notes in that class because taking notes took my attention away from the lecturer, and I got really I felt like I performed better whenever I didn't take notes and whenever I just put 100% of my attention on the lecture. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was that our teacher had said, it's perfectly fine to do audio recordings of this course during our sessions, but I thought about it and I was like, I can take the audio and I can transcribe it and get text back, and then you can use that to make notes. But then I thought about it and I was like, I don't want to pay to transcribe audio to text. A lot of times if you're looking for audio to text service online, speech to text as it's called, you'll find that it costs money to transcribe audio to text because these services online, they have to run their own machines in order to run these machine learning models that take that audio and give you back text. And so I thought about it, I was like, either I'd have to incur that cost on my own or I had to pay someone to do that for me. But then at the time, something else was going on, and OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, they'd released a model that helped people convert audio to text. It was a speech-to-text model, and it was called a Whisper. And there was this version of Whisper called Whisper Tiny. And what's cool about Whisper Tiny is it's pretty powerful, but it's very small in size. It's so small that you can load it onto your browser, and you can perform inference from the client itself. So what inference means is just you can convert audio to text on your browser itself. You don't need to talk to any server. And so that's big because anyone with any device, like an iPhone, can start converting audio to text instantly in real time. And so with those two sort of like big motivating factors, I went ahead and in a week's time, I built Lecture. And here's a little GIF of it working. And while I was recording the GIF, I was talking, and it's able to transcribe whatever's happening in real time on the right-hand side. And so this project was unique because it kind of led me to believe, led me to come to a very important realization, which was that I don't have to search for solutions. A lot of times we think that the thing that we're looking for is out there, but a lot of the times our exact needs aren't met by what's existing. So in the real world. So the ability to apply your own skills to create solutions instead of searching for them is a big realization that helped me in my future projects since then. The second project I want to talk about is PowerPoint Karaoke. So PowerPoint Karaoke is this game, if you guys aren't aware. It's an improv game where you're giving a presentation to a group of people, kind of like how I am now. But the catch is that the slides that are going to be up on the screen are something that I've never seen before. So imagine like a random image, random text, and then some clip art, some graphs on the screen. And you've never seen it before. So as a presenter, you're basically learning how to talk about different topics and kind of weave your way into a story as you go through each slide. And so I really like this game. I learned about it a few years ago, and it's kind of fun as a party game or playing amongst your friends in a small get-together. But what I found was, when I tried to play the game online, there's no free way to do it. Because if you think about it, once you go through a deck of slides, you're done. It's kind of like you can't use that same deck of slides for another person because everyone's seen that deck before, right? How do you play with multiple slides? If you have 10 people, for example, and you want each person to present give a presentation on a deck of slides, you have to create 10 slide decks. That's a lot. So the only option is either you make 10 slide decks on your own, which is very time consuming, or you go online and you find like people selling slide decks, which I'm sure are very carefully curated, but they cost $30, $40 to buy 10 to 20 slide decks. So that's a lot of money, and I of course didn't want to pay that much. So what the solution that I kind of thought of was, hey, there's a bunch of like stock images online that are free. You can use them if you attribute, give attribution. And what I basically did was I created a site where each time you click the arrow for the next slide, a random image is chosen and shown to you on the screen. So you can play essentially an unlimited amount of PowerPoint karaoke with your friends, your colleagues, your teammates, whatever you want. And if this is the URL if you're ever interested in playing yourself. But this project was really fun because at the end of it, I got to play with some of my family friends back home. And one of my family friends, she told me that a few weeks later, she told me that she actually had fun playing this in some kind of like game she had in our class. So I was like, oh, wow. So something I built just for my own use and my own, like the people around me is being used out where I'm not even involved. And so I think that was a really like motivating thing for me. And you see, whenever you see someone, like in this case, there's a company in New York, and they used the PowerPoint karaoke game for their own improv presentations at their monthly team meetings. And they had a lot of fun. And so whenever you see other people using the stuff you've built, not only is it a motivating factor to motivating you to continue to build more, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's something that it's a joy that's very unique. I think it's something that everyone should get to enjoy. So that's why it's another reason I think that why people should build, because there's a lot of enjoyment that you can spread from your own creations. The third project that I want to highlight was called CricTables. And CricTables, unlike the other projects, was born out of my need to learn. So I was trying to learn Google searches and Google rankings. I wanted to know, how do you rank high on Google searches? How do you get that first, second, third, fourth, fifth spot on any given search, right? That's a big question for anyone who owns a site online is trying to answer. And I was trying to get content from my sites ranked high on Google searches. I had no idea, because every attempt of mine to kind of rank high was either falling short or was not getting me to where I wanted. My pages weren't getting on the first page. Sometimes they weren't even getting ranked at all on like the first, second, third page. And so that got me thinking, what can I do to maybe learn the system and learn how it works. At the same time, I'd learned a bit about this thing called programmatic SEO. And it's this kind of fancy term, but what it really means is when you have a database with just like a bunch of data in it, why don't you create a different page for each data point in that database and publish that on your site? That's basically what programmatic SEO is. In this example, you can see if you have a database of cities, and it has, for each city, you have like the best pool cleaning service from that city. What you can do is go through this database with some code and then create a new page on your website for each city. So you'll say like best cleaning services in X city, best cleaning services in Y city. And so whenever anyone from any of those cities searches like what's the best pool cleaning service in X city, they'll find your page. And Google will basically realize, hey, this site's really, really good at showing content about pool cleaning services. Let me push it up there in the rankings and let me show it to many people. So these two things were brewing in my mind at the same time, and I thought about it, and I've basically found this database of like cricket matches. I'm quite a big cricket fan, and it basically had every cricket match from the last 40 years, international cricket match. And so I thought about it. I could do the same thing that this person's done with pool cleaning services for cricketers, right? And that's sort of what I did. So I basically pulled from each match. I was able to pull data about each player. And what I was able to do is kind of build this head-to-head matchup site. So every single combination of player that's played against each other in a game is on this site, right? And so you can think about how many combinations. There's like so many, hundreds, thousands of players who have played the game at an international level, and each of them has probably faced up against each other as a bowler or a batter so many times, right? So there's effectively hundreds of thousands of pages on this site that were created instantly without me having to write a new page for each cricketer. So this is huge, because As a single person, I'm able to generate a bunch of content, and then whenever people do searches for, like, what's this player against this player's stats, they'll find my site because I almost guaranteed have data about that specific combination. So lots of combinations. I have data about each combination, and so anyone curious enough to do a search for X player versus Y player is likely going to find my site. And when I went ahead and did this, and I published the site on crictables.com, and I waited for a couple weeks. I basically thought, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to go ahead and post it somewhere. I'm not going to let my experiment be introduce confounding variables into my experiment. Maybe the success could be attributed to me publishing it somewhere. So I didn't do that, and I just let it sit. And Google eventually picked up, and it recognized my site as a valuable site for cricket stats, and it began to show it to users in like the matter of like a week or two. So you can see here, this is like about like a week or two since I launched, and then it took off since then. And this is I think about a 2-month period, almost 2 months. So 2,000 clicks, 50,000 impressions at like 4.4% click-through rate is not too shabby for a site that didn't take a lot of effort to build. So I would say that my experiment was a success. I now know that this thing works. This tool, programmatic SEO, works. In your case, it could be anything else. But if you're ever curious about an idea, if you're ever curious about how to do something, or ever curious about something in your craft, I think learning by doing, learning by building is one of the best ways to apply the concepts that you may be slightly aware of, like might have a fuzzy understanding of, and you can basically solidify your understanding by building solid proof. You can prove to yourself, I really know what this is all about because I built something that's directly derived from that specific topic. And so I think that was a really powerful realization that I'm going to carry forward. And this is something that I did this summer. Now, I want to go back chronologically. Crick Tables was something I built this summer, but Just Buzzin' was, I want to say that the first project of mine that really got me into building. And it was when I was in end of freshman year in high school. And at the time, I was on my high school's quiz bowl team. So if you guys don't know what a quiz bowl is, it's like a Jeopardy-style quiz competition. So you have like 4 players on each side. You have a moderator, and each player has access to a buzzer. And the buzzer is connected to this big centralized system right here. And what basically happens is, whenever the moderator starts reading a question, whenever you as a player know the answer to that question, you just press buzz, and then you can give your answer. If it's correct, the moderator gives you points. If it's incorrect, then the buzz goes to the other team, and they have a chance to buzz in whenever they know the answer. So this whole system is kind of like specifically attuned. The buzzer system is attuned to Quiz Bowl specifically. So it's kind of hard to find apps online that do this digitally. And we didn't really need that because we held practices in person every Tuesday. But then we had a hard time holding these practices when the pandemic hit, because everyone was at their own houses, and we were forced on like a Zoom call or like Discord call, and everyone was in the call, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way that we can run something like this. We first started, everyone just says buzz in the call, and that got really confusing because there's a lot of people in the practice. Then we kind of resorted to maybe in the Zoom chat or in the Discord chat, we just press like, oh, buzz, and then we hit enter, so to mark the order of buzzes. But it turns out Discord starts like putting a limit on the number of messages you send, and if you send really small messages, it's like, oh, you sent this last time. So it's a really confusing, and it's a system not attuned to how Quiz Bowl works. So at the time, I had a bit of experience in coding, but I thought my club is in like really bad shape right now without some kind of way to practice online, and I think it'd be best if we had some kind of system that was specifically for Quiz Bowl. And I had a lot of free time while I was stuck in the house, so is maintain a mental deadline. Since we're building something small and targeted, you want to tell yourself that you're going to finish working on something by a certain date and really commit to that. There's going to be times where you can, build something, and keep at it for months or weeks at a time. But if you're really trying to get something done in a few days or a week or two tops, you should try to keep that small deadline. And I think building small things at first and building your way up is a much better way to get attuned to how your personal style with building, your personal tool set, your personal way of doing things. And doing it on a micro level first has at least for me, brought great benefit in my journey of building. The third tip I have is be public about what you've made. I'm guaranteeing you guys that something that you've built will benefit someone else. So you're kind of like doing a net disservice to the world, you can call it, if you're not sharing your work, because other people out there likely have the same needs or likely will gain the same enjoyment from the stuff that you've built for yourself. And being public about what you made, even if you get criticism at the end of the day, is important. There's some of my projects where people online have commented, "Oh, that's not technically impressive," or "That was really easy." And at the time, it was like, "Oh, why would someone say something like that?" Or can't they see the whole building process that I've been through? But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. I think for every person that's out there that's willing to criticize you, there's a bunch more that are willing to support it and gain the same enjoyment from the things that you're willing to build and put out there. My fourth tip is that you shouldn't stop, because the entire process of building becomes increasingly less daunting as you continue to build more. And this ties into the tip number 2, which is to build small. If you combine building small at the beginning with not stopping, I think you'll be surprised how quickly your skills develop and how quickly you can get to the stage where you'll almost be unrecognizable compared to your past self. You'll be thinking, now this is normal for me. But if me from a year ago, me from a month ago, were to look at me now and see, how what I've built, it's almost baffling how that's possible. And so I think that's one of the most important things, perseverance. I want to end off on a quote that I find really interesting by Sheryl Sandberg. She was on the executive team of Facebook a few years ago, and she has this quote from her book, and it's basically that done is better than perfect. And I think that's a great quote because you should just get out there and do. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer. Yeah?
A question about your startup.
Sure.
Is it deployed? Are people using it?
Yeah. So I actually pull it up. So I would say did an official launch in early July, and it's been a few months since then. I did some marketing, but primarily a lot of the bulk of the users come from Just Buzzin'. So I added a banner at the top, a little, you can say I've made it clear that this is kind of affiliated with Just Buzzin', and if you're looking for more, you can definitely come here. So people who go to the original site often land up on this site, and if this is what they need, they actually buy it. So yeah, so a couple of universities have been using it. A lot of people actually within their own companies are using it because they have Monday morning meetings where they want to add a little bit of fun into the meeting, or on Fridays, people have end of week, let's just have a little trivia session. So that's really useful. And so yeah, so I think right now there's around 1,000 to 1,100 users, and then paying customers maybe around 30. So it's doing well. It's picking up pretty fast, and I think yeah, I've really enjoyed working on it. So I think that's the main joy I get out of it, and the fact that people are using it is a plus on top of that. So yeah.
Can you customize the kind of questions that it generates for exams such as the GRE, where it's not really you have all the course material, but the questions are very they're supposed to be directed towards how quickly can you solve this,
Okay.
than actually doing the math.
Okay.
The GRE questions are different from
So
how you would form it.
Right. So one thing that this thing has is a time limit. So one of the modes is a live trivia mode. So this one. So where you can have a live trivia game where questions just appear on the screen or on the devices of all the people in playing the game, and then people just either do a multiple choice question or a free response, and they can enter, and you can set a time limit per question. So if you're trying to test mental math, if I understand correctly, yeah, you can have a, you can, I think the easiest way to do that is take the GRE material, upload it, ask it. There's a prompt where you can specify what you're looking for maybe, and then get a bit more streamlined questions and answers, and then you will basically have a set of 10 to 50 questions, and then you can play with your audience. So yeah, so I'm trying to add more customizability because I know that's something people look for, but so far I think it's at a state where it would be, I think it'd do what you're saying pretty well. So yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you go about determining the pricing and what you should offer for free and what should be premium or subscription versus non?
That's a great question. I think I didn't know much about like the business side of things when I first dove in. You just know as a consumer, you go in and you think, when I pay for stuff, like what do I do? How do I act? And it really makes you mindful of the decisions you make as a consumer when you're on the other end. So like you think about like, what do I pay for Spotify every month? And I think about, okay, if people are willing to pay that much for a service like that, how much value would I offer here? So to answer your question, I think that you really have to kind of look at it from a value-based pricing method. So what that means is like, think about how much value you're providing rather than the traditional effort that it takes to produce something. So if someone's buying a book, a lot of the times how things are priced, material things, physical things, is that they're priced based on what it took to produce something. So if the stool, for example, to buy this stool, it's probably all the human labor, the material costs, maybe markup for the company to earn profit, stuff like that. But when you're building something like software, which is you can reproduce for maybe a few cents, of like you can say server costs are the only real costs I have. You have to now term things in terms of value. So how much value would I be providing to a company, and would it or a teacher or anyone, and how much would that be in equivalence with the pricing? So in this case, the pricing looks like something I thought that would be fair for a smaller teacher. So I really wanted smaller teachers to still get the benefit of using something like that. So like if there's just one teacher with a class of like 30 students, they can still use the buzzer mode, which is like the same stuff from Just Buzzin', but just a lot more polished and has a lot more features in it, a lot more robust. But if they want to use a lot of the AI features, or they have a bunch more participants, they'd ideally be willing to pay for that. And I came across, like you were saying, subscription or not. I thought that subscription would be more fitting because if you're running meetings, you probably do them recurringly, like every week, every month, and so that's why I landed on a subscription price. And then I have this kind of tab here for anyone who has needs bigger than 60 people a month. So you can think of large conferences who only do things one time a year, and so for them it's more custom. What features do you need implemented? How much do you think? How many people would be there? How much do you think would be a fair price to charge you? But the default price is like $10 a month, basically. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
What is the ratio of how many people are buying it just individually and how many organizations are buying it?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of hard to know because organizations or people can both go through this link and click upgrade. Like I'll show you guys, for example. They can both go through this sort of like payment flow, and they can click buy, and they can buy the app the same way. And so the only way I really know who's a corporation or who's a company and who's not is what email they use. So I'd say it's like 50% maybe. 50% of people use like their business or school email, or if they're like affiliated, whatever organization they're affiliated with, and then 50% use their personal email. And that's not a exact split. I don't really know what people are using it for exactly, unless I conduct a survey. But I'd say about half of the people who buy are using it for their own use, and then half of the people are using it for commercial use. Yeah.
Did you have any intention that you want to market it to either? Did you want to go
Yeah.
to organization?
So yeah, that's a good question. So I don't really. Throughout the summer, I was really like curious what would be a better way to go about this, and I think towards the end. I want to make it able for anyone to go ahead and buy and go ahead and go through the payment flow. But where I should devote my marketing efforts, you can say, I think there'd be more reward behind the seeking to help businesses, or like teachers or school districts, rather than people who pay out of pocket. Because if you can get this thing reimbursed, and if it's a corporate expense, then a lot more people can use this. You know, $10 a month is, you know, pretty for an individual. It's a significant price to pay. But for a company and how much value you can provide them internally, it's you know, there's less sort of like there's less pushback from the business or organization who's looking to, you know, host these meetings, and they value hosting the meetings more than the $10, let's say. So I think, yeah, my efforts have mostly now been focused on how do I target, you know, big organizations, school districts, companies, universities, nonprofits who, you know, have that monetary backing that they can, you know, buy this with ease, basically. Yeah, Alyssa?
So I know that you mentioned a tip that I thought was really helpful was like setting a mental deadline. I think
Yeah.
it was really helpful because I struggle a lot with feeling satisfied enough with a project to release it to the public. So I was wondering, do you personally or do you have any tips for like a general set of like metrics of success that you follow that indicate whether or not you should release a project to the public?
That's a good question. So I think for me, it mainly comes down to what do I, you know, if I was coming across this as a user, if I was looking at something, what would I feel? And I think I reached that threshold of like completeness, you can say, whenever I feel as a consumer, you know, looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, I like this in some sort of way. It doesn't have to be perfect. I know you could always say, oh, this can have this feature and this can you can add this onto it. But if I feel satisfied, like let's say, like if I look at it and I'm like, you know, maybe it doesn't have this, maybe it doesn't have that, but I'm, as a user, I'd feel satisfied using this. I think that's when you know you've reached a point where in your casual building journey, you can push something out in the real world. Of course, something like this, like a Ziggy, is something that I continually work on, you know. Like every feature in this app, the landing page, I've revamped, you know, 2-3 times trying to perfect it because this is something that I recognize is like an ongoing process. But something that I know from the outset, I've told myself, hey, I'm going to be done with this in a week or two, max. I go in with the mindset that it's not meant to be perfect. It's just meant to just be out there and fulfill its purpose. So yeah, Nikhil?
Like in your response, you just kind of indicated that some projects that when you go into them, you kind of already have a mindset that this is only 2 weeks, whereas basically you revisited it and you decided to expand on it and do stuff. But then, how do you decide between ideas, and how do you decide what's worth it and what's what's just moving on?
That's a good question. So I think why I let JustBuzz and snowball into something bigger rather than some of my other projects was, I think one, just because of the massive scale that JustBuzz reached in comparison to the other projects I had. So just looking at, this is the great thing about building casually. You put so much stuff out there, statistically something's going to land. I guarantee it. You don't know what, but something's going to land. And since that was what resonated the most among the public, you go with that. Because especially if you're building something like a startup, something that's looking to make a profit for yourself, you want to go with what other people think is good. I still value all of my experiences. I still value everything I did equally. I wouldn't say JustBuzzin' is any better than the other projects I build that are more comical, less serious, maybe just intended for my own learning. But I think that JustBuzzin' was the one that got the most usership, you can call it. And that's something that you want to look for, because there's really two minds that I'm in. When I'm just building, I'm just honing my craft. I'm building something cool, and that's the goal in and of itself. But when you're running a startup, it's a different mind. You're thinking about profitability. You're thinking about I can't just give a subpar product because people are going to pay for it. There's a lot more it's a lot less carefree. And I think that that's the part about building I like. It's carefree. You can do it, build something, and people use it. They like it. They don't. Hopefully you learn something, and hopefully you can use it as well. But when it's a startup, if people are giving you money for this to work and to work as advertised and to succeed, and for them to feel that they got their money's worth. So I think when I'm in that kind of headspace, I'm more so thinking about a lot more serious stuff. But the thing about building is it should really remain something that you keep as a more personal thing. This is something that's more serious, and when I come into it, it brings me almost, you can say, a different kind of joy. But the joy that you get from building should be something much more personal, something that you can you get no matter what the outcome is. So to answer your question, JustBuzzin', based on the outcome, I went ahead and turned that into something bigger. But I would say everything still has its utility. Every project, even the ones that weren't shipped out there, helped along the way. So yeah.
Quick little follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
And then how do you, like, are you going to continue building? Like, how does that work? Because you have this idea. But
Yes.
if there's another idea that if you act on it, you get more commercial success.
That's a good question. So I think for now, this brings me like enough happiness and joy, and I'm seeing enough feedback, you can say, from people buying it, people using it, that I feel like this is what I'm going to be doing for now. But of course, if something better comes along through this little, small, tiny other things that I'm going to be building on the side, then you just go with that. I'm ready to go with the flow, but I think that's why like building small things is so cool, because you don't know what's going to take off, as I said. So if something else piques my interest more than this is right now, I'd go with it. But right now, this is where I'm at. Yeah.
You mentioned that a lot of the projects that you do are personal projects.
Yeah.
So the first people that see it is your friends, right?
Yeah, generally just me, and then I show it to my friends or family sometimes, my parents. Yeah.
So does that ease the pressure of building smaller things, because you're not putting it out there for people to use in a serious way?
Yeah,
Just doing it.
I think yes. In the beginning, it definitely, like, you share it amongst your friends, and they say they like it. But I still think for all of my major projects, except the ones like Crick Tables, where the whole premise was I'm not going to tell people about it because I want to see how the experiment lands out. But for most of the time, I do share it publicly. I do put it onto the public eye on forums that where people would find this sort of stuff interesting, or online boards, or I'd tell people about it in person if it'd be something that they're interested in. But I think that putting it out there to people that you don't know, the general public, is something that helped me get over my fear of continually launching. I mean, I still get afraid when I'm up all night. When I had to launch a Ziggy, for example, you have to post about it on a bunch of different websites. You have to do it at exactly midnight PST. You have to do all these things. But I was in much better shape for that because I've done that for all the you can say less consequential projects. So I think that sharing with your friend group is great, but the general public, I think there's immense value in telling them about it too, because they're not going to be they're going to say it to your face, this is not good, or this is something like that, and you take it in stride, and then that personal resilience builds up. So when you're going to do something more commercial, let's say, you're used to that kind of positive or negative feedback, whatever it is. Yeah. Eric?
As a builder, where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years down the line? Do you have an end goal?
I don't know. I honestly don't know where I'd end up. I'm just trying to take it, one project at a time. But yeah, I think I want to be somewhere happy is all I'd say. But I think right now I gain joy from building, so I'd hope then that I can still continue doing that. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, feel free. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much for attending. How'd you guys like it? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.